Thank you, Chelsea, so much for being with me today. And just thank you so much for taking the time to just share with me about your experience with the Mentorship Lab. And I would love to just ask you a few questions and just see how your experience was. And we'll just go from there. Does that sound good?
Sounds like a plan. I can't wait to rant and rave about it.
So adorable. So before we dive in, I'd love to just to tell me a little bit about your business and what you're building, and then I'll ask you the first question.
Yeah, of course. So I run a business called Live Your Legend, and it helps people to find and do work that they love. So we have an online platform, but a big component of our business is actually getting out in the real world among people who believe the same things that you do. So we actually have a community, a global community, where we have in-person meetups that happen in about 250 cities in nearly 70 countries all around the world. So, and that's just a totally free part of the business. You know, we have courses and things online. We every week publish free content, but that in-person component is a huge factor for living your legend.
I love that so much. Awesome. So I know I personally invited you to join the Mentorship Lab. I know that you're building something super huge and about serving community, which I'm super passionate about. And just curious kind of before we started working together, what were kind of some of the challenges or struggles that you were facing at that time? And I think I reached out to you like in December or...
It was December.
Yeah.
I remember. Well, so I actually stepped into taking over this business sort of without any any time to ramp up. So Jadah basically kept me sane because I was stepping into a leadership role basically as my title is the Chief Inspiration Officer, but I'm at the helm of the business. And so really, I think my biggest thing was, how do I step into this role as a leader when I've never been a leader before? And then also, I think a big thing for me was just kind of the vision of, the company. Obviously, I was learning a lot of the tactical day-to-day, just sort of operations type things that take place on the back end. But I think I was really looking to Jadah, to you, I guess I should say, to have that dream. Jadah and I have been friends for a while now, and I've always admired her for what a dreamer she is. So I think those are probably my two biggest things was like, how do I dream when I'm like kind of scraping to keep up? And then at the same time, how do I present myself as a leader when I personally, one, don't have the confidence that I am this leader quite yet. So those are probably my two big rocks, I think, that you were helping through.
I love that. And were there any like limiting beliefs that you had kind of coming in, like if there was any stories that were going on in your head about the leadership part, or just some of those things that might have been a block that were holding you back on more of a mindset, mental thing?
Absolutely. I mean, prior to this, I had only ever been an employee, and I'd always said, like, I'm not the entrepreneurial type. Like, I love working for people. And so huge limiting belief was that this isn't me. Like, I'm not meant to be a leader. I'm meant to follow directive, and I execute super well when I do that. So that was huge. And then I also think, for the people that don't know, I actually took the business over from my late husband. And so I think that a huge limiting belief for me was I'm not him, and in that, I think that now I see I'm still not him, but I think in the process of working with you, I had so much realization that I can bring me to the mission of the business in that way. So that was a big limiting belief, is how am I supposed to keep this going when I'm not him? So those are probably the two biggest limiting beliefs I had. I know there were lots of them.
Yeah,
biggest one, I can't insert almost everything.
I love that so much. And like, I think that's such an inspiring thing, even just to share. Like, my husband, George, runs a music program, but he sees himself as like just the artist. And he's like, I'm not entrepreneurial. I can't hang out with your people in this entrepreneurial tribe. And the same thing of like just needing direction. And so I love that you've shared that. And also I've seen the transformation that you are totally a leader. And so that just like gives me hope for him, and like him really taking ownership in that space as well. And I've just seen your voice like just unleash in such powerful ways. And you're so inspiring to me, and just, it's such a gift to be able to see your written word taking on the Live Your Legend community. And so I'm thankful to that we get to hear that piece of your voice. So what would you say is kind of like, since being a part of the mentorship lab feels like the results that you've experienced from just being in the community and having the one-on-one talks with me? And I'd love to just kind of hear what that was for you.
Well, I'm going to start from the overall, like I had two very huge moments of like breakthrough. And I know breakthroughs don't actually happen in moments, but like when I look back at the last, let's say 6 months or whatever it's been, like I know that there were two huge realizations for me. And one was on that topic of dreaming. You know, there are kind of still a lot of unknowns in my life about what my future looks like. And I don't have a home. Like, I don't know where I'm going to live and all this stuff. And I remember going to the retreat thinking, how am I supposed to dream big, but dream with space? Like the space to, you know, not need to know all of those things right now. And our weekend together, I think you just facilitated it in such a way where it wasn't about like needing to know all these specific details, right? Like it was like, why, it was almost just getting back to the why of like, why are you doing what you're doing? And how does that project? Like, we don't need to know all the details. It's really just kind of really honing in on that why. So that was huge for me that weekend. And then just our last call that we had, going back and, you know, re-listening to that and seeing just that when you put stuff out there, the way that it almost manifests, like without, I'm not gonna say you're not doing the work, but I had never been a person who like wrote my dreams or said them aloud. And I listened to that and I had chills all over my body because it was like, how in 6 months are parts of this dream already real, you know? And I think that if we hadn't said it aloud, like I am a goal setter, I do all these things, but having that and then really touching back on it at that finite point just made me, it was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe what I have done in 6 months. And you always say that thing about we underestimate whatever and overestimate that one. But like, it was just mind-boggling to me to see what I had done in 6 months. So those are the big picture things. But then also like, I think just, you know, we're like in the thrash a lot, right? We're like, I don't know what I'm doing. We second guess, you know, and you were just such a great sounding board for me to like be like, I feel that maybe these team dynamics aren't quite right, you know, and you would not, you know, you weren't like, hey, you have to do it this way. It was just a nice perspective outside of my own head. And that would probably be what I got most from our one-on-ones. And then the group calls, I think I got the most just from, I mean, honestly, knowing that you're not alone in like these crazy thoughts that you have running a business, huge. And then once again, it wasn't that I was just getting one perspective, I was getting all of the women's perspectives. And that was really cool. And I got some amazing and brilliant ideas through that process.
I love that so much. And I'd love for you to talk a thing that I love that you say that you've kind of embraced, especially at the beginning of us working together, was taking a stand for, I'm going to lead from my heart and not from my head. And like, I just saw you consistently hold on to that throughout the entire process. Like, is there any stories or specific moments that you feel that you really kind of exemplified that in the process of really owning that part? Because I just love that so much.
Well, you know, I'm kind of just dealing with the passing of my husband and stuff. I think I've just kind of like had to take that approach to life in general, because things don't always make sense, you know, but when you feel something, or you kind of feel pulled in one direction or another, like I've kind of just had to lead from that place in general, because it's, you know, I think that things don't always make sense. And so from a business standpoint, I think that we could talk ourselves out of things all the time. Like I see my head turn on all the time when an idea or something comes up, and then my brain will say, well, that's stupid. That doesn't make sense. That's not logical, blah, 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 blah. But I think that for me, at least, like what I've sort of just realized is that like we kind of make decisions from two places. There's some middle ground, but like it's either from a place of love or from a place of fear. And I just like, it sounds so cliche, but I think love conquers all. And like people see that too. Like, you know, especially if your voice is part of your business, like people feel when you're feeling, right? Like if you write from a place of like where you felt deeply, people then feel that and then they connect with that, and we're all human, and that's how it works. So I've just, you know, there's been decisions I've made that don't totally make sense. They don't need to make logical sense, but they felt right at the time. And, you know, if I learn a lesson from them, I'm going to learn one way or another. So what's the worst that could happen, right?
I love that so much. And I'm just like taking a huge stand for intuitive leadership, that as women, especially, like we're so tapped in, and that logic side can definitely get in the way. And that's why I'm always like love over metrics. It's just like, yes, we want those numbers. We want the, you know, the communities to grow and all of that, but you have to lead from that place of love first. And then those rest of those things will fall into place on like how they should. And so you rock that.
I couldn't agree more. Like, I think that when you have a foundation, you might not be able to see how it's going to build up into a house, but when you are solid with that value and that foundation, it does. Like, we don't need to know how, because when you have that solid foundation, it builds itself, and not builds itself, but you know what I mean? Like, you don't see it, but it's going to go from that place where you come from a solid ground, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I also love what you shared just about like the team building, and just you have never doing like a team meeting before or team retreats. Like you're just like, you've like just become a total CEO. You're like more than just chief inspiration officer. Would you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, and that's, you know, once again, it kind of gets back into that head part. Like I remember our first call, I was like, Jadah, I don't even know how to hold a team meeting. Like I had never held a meeting before for my team. Like I've only participated in them. And I'm thinking, oh my God, you need to have all this agenda and all this stuff. And I remember you kind of saying, well, maybe it would be a good idea to meet your operations guy once a week. And maybe it would be a good idea to like have a team meeting once a month. I'm like avidly taking notes, right? And then like, so I got to my first team call, and I made it so simple. I was just like, let's celebrate the things that we think have gone right. And then what is the outcome of this meeting? Like literally that was what I pared it down to. It was like celebration and outcome. And it was so simple. And that is how I've led almost everything since then. It's like, I always go into something with like, what is the outcome? Because why are you even getting together if there's not some sort of outcome? And sometimes the outcome is just to celebrate. That's cool. But, you know, and as you know, I'm a huge celebrator. So that's why I started with that. And that's honestly, I don't have agendas going into like my meetings aside from that. And so that's where I think it's really like my head could have said, okay, well, you need to talk about Q1 goals and, you know, all these things that you hear about, you know, and all this structure. And I was just like, that's not the way I want to do it. Like I want to play, I want to celebrate. And so once again, I think it's like getting the head to turn off a little bit and being like, what's going to fill my heart in this hour meeting or whatever it may be.
I love that so much.
But you did help me a lot with that confidence.
And then you're like, I'm running team retreats now. And like, it feels so much easier. It's like we just have to get out of our head and into action. And you had to do it regardless. You know, you had to go into that space, and just coming in a place of feeling more confident and more grounded of doing it your way versus what you thought a typical like team meeting should be run. And I love that you add that, because you and I both, it's like celebrate the wins, like what's going good first. And then we can go into what's the problem we need to solve, because we don't have a problem solving problems. So I love that about you. So are there any like tools and strategies or anything like that you've kind of taken away for yourself to use, whether it's in your business or in your life, that's kind of helped you, that you've learned from being a part of the mentorship lab?
Yeah, well, I mean, I definitely I learned so much on that retreat that we had, of just kind of like, honestly, a huge thing I think I even took away was even just watching you facilitate the group. Like, that was super cool for me to see. I mean, that was a total like side note, but to just kind of watch, because, you know, I've always really admired you and your approach to life and all the things that you've accomplished. And so to sort of just watch that was really cool. And like, also, I know that put you out of your comfort zone a little bit, and to see you just like own it and shine. Like, when I was in a place where I was so stepping out of my comfort zone, like, I think just a shadow of that was like, gosh, like, she can do it, so can you. So that was huge. And then, I mean, I don't know, I feel like you sent me, I can't even pick one specific thing, because almost after every call, it was like, hey, you know, these finance guys are really great. Or this, I was struggling a bit with like understanding the, you know, budgeting and financing and all this stuff. And like, as soon as I say it, there's a app getting sent to me. And like, there's all that. I feel like every single call we had, there was a follow-up of some sort of either program or app or worksheet or some sort of idea that was followed up after every single call that we had. So I can't think of off the top of my head of like one specific that was like, oh my gosh, this was crazy. But I mean, I gained so many skills and tactical things over the last 6 months, for sure.
I love that. And I think one thing that I love that it was actually something that I had recently learned, was just about asking for more time and space. Yes. And for you being such a doer, such an executor, and just kind of slowing down, I'd love to just hear a little bit about that.
Oh my gosh, that should have been my thing I just said, because that was so big for me. Because like, you know, it's funny, like Scott always had a heart, like he couldn't respond to emails. Like, he had the worst email inbox ever. And I'm always like, I get an email and I write back. And like, it's just, I like do. And I remember when you saying like, sometimes you just need to ask for more space. And it was so out of my nature. But I can't even tell you how much that has allowed me to lead from my heart instead of my head. Like, I remember you and I were talking about this talk where it wasn't a hell yes, it wasn't a hell no. In the moment when they asked me, and I kind of felt like I needed to make a decision, and you were like, what if you just asked for a little bit more space? And I was like, what? Like, I'm not going to just respond yes or no? And I remember like, and I can't even tell you now how many times this has happened to me. I popped up in the middle of the night and was like, I know exactly what I'm going to say. And it became a hell yes. And so like, I can't even tell you like this course that we were thinking of launching that we on hold because I just needed more time. Now it's like the timing of the universe is just exactly perfect where it needs to be, just by simply asking for more space. So I think in that asking for more space, it's really allowed me to stop coming from my head and be like, now it feels right, or now it doesn't feel right. And that's how I'm going to make my decision. So that's been huge for me, for sure.
I love that. And I think that practice of asking for more time and space is, you actually come up with a decision a lot quicker, but that is in that full alignment space. So I love that so much. What would you say to someone if they were considering signing up for the mentorship lab, and they were just...
Hell yes. You don't need more time. Hell yes. Sorry.
I love you, Chelsea. So cute. So if someone had questions, or if they were just hesitating, or is this for me? Like, who do you feel like it's like the right next step for? What would you say to them?
Well, you know, to be honest, like, I was in kind of like a huge, like, kind of growth phase, both personally and from the business. But I mean, among the group that we were in, I saw people in all different phases. You know, I saw people that I was ramping up, but I saw people that kind of needed to step back and maybe not work so much. And then, you know, there was another person who was really kind of building and creating her first product, where I was already coming from an established product, and someone else needed to get a team. And so we were all in different spaces. So My answer to that is, honestly, I don't think that you have to be in a specific space in your business to get benefit from this, because I think that no matter where you are in that curve, there's benefit from, one, like your wisdom and expertise, and two, like I was talking to earlier, just the perspective that you're getting from all of these phases of the business. So I think that, you know, if that's a limiting factor for you for some reason, like, oh, I already have an established business, or, oh, I already have a community, I don't need to grow it, or, oh, I'm too early to go into this, I would say don't let that stop you. And I just think it's one of those, for me at least, it was one of those things where, like, you go into something thinking that you need one thing, but what you actually get the most from out of it is the thing that you never even knew that you needed. So I would just encourage people, like, if there's anything that you're looking to expand, grow, evolve, I don't see, honestly, a reason not to be a part of this, because it taps into places that you don't even know that you need. And then it also taps into what you need at the same time. So I would say go for it.
Love that. Thank you so much, Chelsea. And I know you have a meeting to get to. Is there any other things? And it's okay if there's not, but I just want to leave that loop open for you if there's anything else that you want to share.
The other thing that I would love to share is just also how I would say there was just so much, I felt so taken care of, if that's a good way to put it, because, you know, we would always come into the calls and it was sort of like, let's create like this space for this to really be a focused presence space. And so, like, when we're going through all of our things, sometimes it's easy to rush into one thing and rush out, but like there was always like a groundedness about it. And then between the retreat and just the small little follow-ups that you would do, and, you know, how you close the whole thing out and just everything, like, I felt like, I don't even think taken care of is the right word. It's almost like I felt like I was like being carried like through this journey in like such a light and supported and protected way. And I want to commend you for doing such an amazing job.
Thank you.
You really, it was a journey, you know, it wasn't just a program or a course or something like that. It was a full journey and you carried us the whole way. So I thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea. I love you so much.
I love you too.
We'll be in touch soon, and just thank you for sharing your vulnerability and your heart. And just know that you always have me. Like, I am always in your corner and just love you to pieces.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.